Welcome to Cape Connect. We have a very important show with DIANE TURCO, and we are going to be talking about how to react to the nearby Plymouth nuclear power plant. I'm so glad you're here to educate me more about it, because I've certainly known about it, and as a academic biophysicist, as a person that's done work with radiation, I know something about the issues. And yet, on the other hand, I haven't been over there to protest as you have. And if you don't mind starting, I'd like to know what happened with the grandmothers on Mother's Day. Was it a year or two ago?
Yes, yes, it was a year ago on Mother's Day.
In which you defied, you took a civil action,
right,
and said, this is an important thing. And what happened that time? I've only read a few newspaper accounts of it.
Oh, well, Susan Carpenter, Sarah Thatcher, Mary Conathan, and myself, all grandmothers with Susan and Sarah being great-grandmothers, walked on the property to plant flowers on Mother's Day to reclaim the damaged land there.
And that's a no-no. Not only a no-no, you could have been shot if they decided that you were terrorists.
Well, actually, that's a whole other story of the safety. We've been able to walk right into the building, and no one's even bothered to stop us where the employees scan their hands to go in. We were on the property for 20 minutes at another time,
yes,
and walked off the property with 4 guards off the property with other people, and they didn't even know we were on the property. That we filed. But on Mother's Day, yes, let me get back to Mother's Day. But anyways, so we were charged with trespassing, and we went to trial. And, you know, we were calling attention to the serious dangers. We have a generational responsibility to protect our children and future generations. So we went to trial in Plymouth, and we had Dr. Helen Caldecott as one of our major witnesses.
It was a special event for many people, but for you it was, you know, part of a political action, I gather.
Yes, yes, again, bringing the fact that we are so concerned that we will risk arrest, risk incarceration, and educate the people about what is going on there, the dangers of radiological damage to children and newborns in the fetus, what our government is doing, what the corporation is doing, and it's just a very serious issue.
And we know that that one time didn't do it. It's still going.
Right.
And yet,
right.
Is there a movement which is growing because of it?
Well, what's happening now is Boston is starting to wake up to understand that they're at the same risk that people on Cape Cod are.
Let's use our hands and kind of describe what that's like, because, you know, here's the Cape, and so often, you know, you do this, and this is Cape Cod, right?
Right.
And here's Provincetown,
right,
Chatham, all the way out to Sandwich.
Right.
Yeah, there's the Cape.
Right.
And up here is the nuclear power plant.
Right.
And way up here is Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
It's not so far. Boston is the same distance as Harwich. So living in Harwich, I'm 35 miles as the crow flies from Plymouth. Well, Boston's just in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we know that the state is planning to close the bridges, and we are not going to evacuate if there's a plume coming our way.
I know that too, but so what is it that really will make something happen? What will cause the people to finally say, that's number one, we've got to do something about it?
I think when they're educated to understand that we are an expendable populations to the corporate profit of energy.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Right. And that people need to say no. I mean, we need to be active. Democracy should be a verb, you know? And we've already said on Cape Cod that we want Pilgrim closed, that it's not acceptable, that we're expendable. So people need to stand up and take action. So we're trying to also let people on the other side know that they're in the same risk as we are. A lot of people don't know that. In Boston, we testified at the State House and asked legislators, do you know you're in the same emergency planning zone as Cape Cod? And they had no idea.
They had no idea that they were close enough to a nuclear power plant? I don't believe that. They know that.
Well, they're not. They're thinking they're far away. I mean,
yes, they are far away, but
the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has
what's near and what's far.
Okay. Yes.
Let's take something as I talked to you about what happened 35 years ago that really got people downwind. You know, what happened 35 years ago? Well, Mount St. Helena blew up, a volcano which had blown up before and was expected to be blowing up again, suddenly cut loose. And the ash and plume and violent winds went from there. And then finally, the side of the crater crashed to the north. But the wind, and that's the thing you're talking about,
Right,
the wind was blowing to the east. 11 states got covered. And if you look at the if you look at the coverage of things there, foot deep in ash. I mean, when you consider it was almost a half of a cubic mile. Just think of how much ash that is.
Right, right.
It was spread out.
Right.
Nearby lakes were, and are today, even later, covered with dead tree trunks, just like a scum on the top. It's just devastation still present there.
Right.
Okay, so they were downwinders in a sense, so they didn't use that expression.
Right.
And it depended which way the wind blows.
Exactly.
So I guess you have to say to someone, when you show a map with circles saying, here's how far it could spread out, to say, but it isn't going to go that way and that way at the same time. You might be, I don't want to say lucky, but you might be less fortunate if you were in one direction compared to the other when it goes, if it goes.
Well, what we're saying too is why we don't find the risk acceptable. It needs to be shut down.
Well, you're telling me what should be, but what about this problem of which way the wind's blowing?
Exactly.
You've got the name downwinders.
Well,
You've got to treat wind blows.
Right. We're all downwinders. We're all downwinders.
No, and that is the wrong concept, I would say, because you know, some of us will become, if it does go, some of us will become downwinders.
Right.
And of course, the name itself started in this country out west, where there were tests done. And so the Navajo people, for instance, are being today compensated because they were downwind from many explosions, many tragedies.
Right.
But the people just to the upwind weren't.
Right.
So who are the upwinders going to be when finally the tragedy occurs?
Well, let me tell you, given the given the spent fuel pool, there's already been a study that determined that hundreds of miles downwind will be contaminated if there's an accident there, because the spent fuel pool holds so much waste, over 40 years of waste that's been produced there. So eastern Massachusetts would be affected. It would change the landscape of eastern Massachusetts forever, and New England. There's so much cesium and radiological materials in that spent fuel pool that it's almost incomprehensible the catastrophe that would occur if there's an accident there. And we know it's one of the worst operating reactors in the country.
Well, we can come to that next too, but you brought along one of these safe pills that you've gotten.
Yes.
Not everyone is medically able to take them, but certainly for people to understand if they happen to be in such a tragedy, the benefit, not an inconsiderable benefit, but the benefit of taking the pill. Describe the pill and its benefits.
We say it's kind of a bitter pill to take when you're being told to take a pill to protect your thyroid when you're going to be exposed to radiation that could damage your bones, you know, strontium-90 or cesium-137 damages your soft tissue. So potassium iodide is available for free to anyone on Cape Cod.
But it's a bitter treatment for someone to be irradiated to kill cancer, and yet they do it. So we can call them bitter treatments, but on the other hand, I would say better a bitter treatment than no treatment. So let's talk about the bitter treatment of potassium iodide. What's it good for?
Okay, potassium iodide is a salt. And what it does, it would flood your thyroid with salt, because in a release from Pilgrim, there'd be radioactive iodine.
That's correct.
With cesium and strontium and other very highly dangerous radioactive materials. So you take the KI, it floods your thyroid with salt so that it won't uptake the radioactive iodine.
Yes.
And the most susceptible are the fetus, babies, and children because of their fast growing cells.
Surely.
So, we're not at such a serious risk because we're older and That's just how it is. But young children and babies are the most vulnerable to the damaging effects of
yeah, so
thyroid
therefore you would
problem.
advise,
Yeah.
as I would too,
Mm-hmm.
I would advise not only every family,
Right.
but everyone who's going to host any guests
Right,
during
right.
the summertime to have this available in case
Right.
there is, as you say, a possible accident, a likely accident
Absolutely.
at Pilgrim.
Right, right.
Yeah, so
Absolutely,
you,
it will protect
so
your
you
thyroid.
advocate
Yes.
for this.
Yes, we advocate that people should have
Absolutely.
potassium iodide.
Good.
But we also want
Yeah.
people to understand too, it only protects your thyroid. You're still going to be hit with the cesium and the strontium. And we also ask people to question, we are given a pill by the government. What corporation in all of America gives a medication to the population if they have a problem? And that's what Entergy is doing to us. We are taking a pill so that they can profit on Cape Cod Bay. It's a big question.
Unfortunately, there are no pills for the strontium, but to understand,
right.
some of these are artificially produced radioactive substances when you have a nuclear explosion don't have a short half-life, and so it's not a problem to worry about the long-range effects of radioactive iodine. That will be gone in a few number of weeks.
Well, also too is
that will be gone in a few number of weeks, no question.
Right.
But the strontium and the many other ones will last a much longer time in the soil.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And so you can contemplate for a limited region that there will be a wasteland.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it might not even be limited, considering again too that we know that hundreds of miles will be contaminated because of what's in that spent fuel pool if there's a severe accident at the reactor. It's huge. This is huge. And again too, that's our big question is this to the public, is this acceptable?
Yeah.
In a democracy, people are saying no, it isn't. So how do we move our government to do something about that? That's the big question. Absolutely.
What's the answer that's
well, we're
coming
finding,
out?
We see that Pilgrim is kind of a microcosm of what's happening in our whole country when the corporations are having more control over our lives and our health than we can in our own communities. And so we're calling on the governor to, well, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is a federal agency, and it's the only agency that can close a reactor, other than the corporations that close them if they're not profitable.
And by the way, that's exactly what happened in Vermont.
Exactly.
For a long time, they fought to keep that one going, and all of a sudden, you didn't have to oppose it anymore. It wasn't profitable.
Exactly.
So
and the people there fought it. The people there fought it. The governor said shut it down. The legislature wanted it shut. The people of Vermont wanted it shut.
They couldn't win it.
But they kept pushing and pushing in court cases and public, and there was a lot of pressure.
And it didn't work.
Well,
the
I
only
would
thing
say
that worked was finally, economically, the power industry said, hey, this is no longer affordable, goodbye.
Well, I think too is...
I don't mean to laugh about it, but don't you take that as ironic?
Well, I mean, that's part of it because it's all about money.
Yes.
It's all about money, and that's where we have to say no. This is about our children, their health, and their future. All right, and that's where our activism is coming from. But it is about the money. And what we see in Pilgrim is Entergy's not putting money into fixing equipment. You know that that Storm Juno, where the storm, there was a scram during the storm. Well, the equipment that failed had should have been replaced in 2013, but Entergy didn't do it.
We should say that whenever there has been a catastrophe, and there have been a few, you always find that it is both the design of the place and it is the particular equipment, and it is failure by operators. Those three things come together in order to create it. And by the way, you know, Cape Cod Times had this, the Sierra Club.
Yes.
Well, maybe not surprisingly, but they joined the call to close Pilgrim.
Right.
And I think they say it pretty well. They declare a state leader in the drive to generate energy from clean and safe sources. That's what they want to do, of course. They compare the 43-year-old nuclear reactor in Plymouth to coal plants that are being shut down. It is old, outdated, inefficient, expensive, unsafe, dirty, and operating with a water discharge permit that hasn't been renewed in 19 years.
Right.
I guess these are all things, and you knew everyone?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
of course you
and
did.
the subsidies that go into nuclear power, all the subsidies that go into nuclear power are a theft of renewables. So we need to be closing Pilgrim and working on renewable energy for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you know, it takes in 510 million gallons of water a day from Cape Cod Bay and spits it back out 30 degrees warmer and damaging that whole area. And the Clean Water Act, the permit, is 19 years overdue. You know, they're supposed to be using the best technology there, and they're not. So again, too, who's following up on this? The EPA is not being responsible.
Well, it'll be very expensive, of course, when they close it. You'll have to take, as you currently do now, all the rods and put them in concrete casts instead of just keeping them in water.
No.
Wouldn't it be nice to put them out west if we could?
You know, and then we, I mean, one of the plans was to send it out to indigenous lands, which is really another criminal act to take advantage of indigenous people. But what's happening is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, if you study what they've done, is they have always, whatever the industry needs, they go along with. They have designed this, it's called Safe Store. And where they come up with these names is really remarkable. But it allows the utility, once they shut down, to keep all of that waste, the 40 years of waste, in an overstuffed pool, in that pool for 60 years before they do anything with it. So they can keep it there for 60 years.
But that's not what's happening in Vermont. They're putting it off in concrete, aren't they?
No.
Am I wrong about that?
No, actually, and even at Pilgrim, they've only taken out, they have some dry casts there, they've only taken out what they need to refuel. So when they refuel, they have to put that right in the pool. So they've only taken out what they need because the NRC has cried uncle on the number there now. So it's, I mean, densely packed and tightly racked, and the Union of Concerned Scientists have said that there could be a spontaneous fire there. It needs to be reduced, but it costs money. So again, too, we get back to the money.
Yeah. Money that you and I will have to pay.
Decommissioning is going to be billions of dollars,
very
and we're going to be
expensive.
stuck with it. Entergy is a limited liability company, and they could just, bankrupt and walk away and leave that. The town of Plymouth is a nuclear waste dump now, and the bridge is 12 miles away. If there was, again, too, if there was an accident there, how would you get to Cape Cod? I mean, Cape Cod would be gone, as we love it so much. So we all need to stand up and fight for our families and our communities and our future generations to get this closed and get that spent fuel into dry casks. They're not 100% safe. The casks, they're finding that they crack. There's a lot of issues even with the casks. You would think an industry that, how old is it, 45, 50 years old, would have come up with a way to get rid of the waste. Not happening.
Yeah, well, they thought they had, but then the disposal place was essentially declared off limits by one of the senators in charge.
Right. Well, even then, if they had to transport all of that waste on the highways, I mean, very dangerous, very dangerous, yeah. So we're saying stop producing the waste, stop producing this dangerous material, and start working on putting it in safer dry casks. But I don't know if we'll ever be safe.
Yeah. How is the organization morphing, I would ask, because you're going from Cape Downwinders to a Massachusetts Downwinders?
Yes.
How does that work, and how do people get in touch with?
Okay. All right. Well, we began as Cape Downwinders when we found out that we were going to be stuck here from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency.
Wonderful name. You appropriated it and you chose well.
Right. So people on the Cape are very educated on this issue, and when they passed those ballot questions, we thought, wow, people are understanding it. So we thought we need to start moving towards Boston. So I went up to a Boston meeting, and somebody said, well, why don't you just move from the Cape if you're so worried? And I thought, they don't know. Harwich 35 miles, Boston 35 miles. They're in the same danger as we are. So there are groups up in the Boston area. There's Boston Downwinders, there's people in Jamaica Plain and Newton, in Watertown. They're starting to organize in their communities and start educating up there. And people are starting to understand that they're also at risk too. And then what do? It's not acceptable. And pressuring the governor and our elected officials to call on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to close Pilgrim now and remove that spent fuel and put it into dry casks.
Yeah. It's always a question of what risk will people take, and you know,
Right.
I have a granddaughter living in San Francisco,
Right.
and my daughter and her husband are there, and grandson there. San Francisco is a dangerous place to live. We know that.
Right, right,
They're accepting that.
right.
They should
Right.
move, perhaps.
Right.
There's nobody that they can suddenly.
But you can't stop earthquakes, you know what I
Aha,
mean? But
there you go.
but we have a choice here. That's what we have a choice.
Of course.
Needs to be shut down.
What likelihood do you think that this will happen?
Cape Downwinders has been pursuing the issue of public safety
Yeah.
in our democracy. And do we have a voice in what happens to us in our communities? And that's what we're trying to really become good citizens in raising our voices and awareness and making change. We're not going to stop until it's shut down.
I'm not asking you to give the odds on a bet, but I mean, but what chance do you think this does have of moving ahead?
I guess dissent in a democracy is an act of faith. And I'm not sure who said that, but I love that quote. We're going to keep fighting until it's shut down. What percent? I don't know. I don't know.
We don't have to give it a number. Is it at all likely? I don't mean to embarrass you by asking that.
No, you're not embarrassing me.
But people do ask that question.
Right,
How
right,
likely is it that you could achieve this? You can
as
certainly
likely as
achieve the education.
Right. As likely as citizens in a democracy can have an impact on their own communities and their health against a corporation. So whatever that is.
Those aren't such bad odds, as a matter of fact, even though that's quite a struggle.
Unfortunately, it is a struggle, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Anything else that we, since we're doing a TV show, that you think should be said at this point?
Well, I just think again too, it's citizen activism involvement that always has made change, and it's always somehow fighting against corporations or money. And we can't allow that to happen. So,
and let's end with the answer to the question: how important is civil disobedience in this issue, and how important is it to stand out on roadways, roundabouts with signs?
It's real important, and again too, Martin Luther King called us to action by using creative tension, and that's going into a community, creating an action so that it can no longer be ignored, and it makes people understand the issue. And getting out in the streets, actually Ralph Nader also says half a democracy is showing up. Getting out in the streets and making your voice known. If we had 1,000 people at that reactor walking over that line, do you think that would make a difference? I think so. I think so, yeah.
I think it might move the bigger headlines.
And I think it might move the governor. You know, I mean, that's what politicians need to see the people understand an issue to really move forward. Like Dan Wolf and Sarah Peak are outstanding. You know, our Cape delegation is, they understand the issue completely. So we need to move that through the whole state.
Yeah. Well, folks, thank you for being part of our discussion as we move ahead. Cape Connect will be back with organizations and issues and various possibilities of what may happen in the future at Cape Cod. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.